HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it's a way of telling web browsers how to structure web pages. I'm Zach, and this is my first video in a beginner series on web development. Now, I'm using Visual Studio Code and Google Chrome for this tutorial. If you want to follow along, you'll also need Atom One Dark Theme and Live Server. I'll provide links down below. Okay, now once you've downloaded everything, which I trust that you have, open a new folder. I've already got one here. And create a new file. Name it index.html. Web servers by default look for index, so if you name your file index, it will be loved by web servers, trust me. Now start your file with a Doctype declaration, which starts with a less than sign, an exclamation mark, uppercase Doctype, lowercase HTML, and then a greater than sign. Space between Doctype and HTML, don't forget that. This is very important. It tells the browser that this is an HTML file. Because the browser couldn't read the HTML extension, we need to explicitly, very obviously state that this is an HTML file. We're also saying we're using the most recent version. Very important. Always must be on the first line, this Doctype declaration. Very important. Followed by this, we will need a root element. So the root element in HTML has your entire web page inside of it. So how do we create an element? Well, we need to create tags. We need a start tag and an end tag. Start tag starts with a less than sign, then the name of the tag, and then a greater than sign. And you'll see here how nice Visual Studio Code has created our end tag for us. The end tag is just the start tag, but with a / before the tag name. And in between these two tags is the content of our element. So this HTML element, the content is our entire page. And you can also add information to elements. Instead of content, which is inside of the element, you can add information through attributes in the head tag. So go head tag, start tag. So go into the start tag and just before the greater than sign, add a space. And then we can type the name of the attribute, an equal sign, and then in double quotation marks, we'll give it the value. So I've just created a language attribute and I've given it a value of EN for English. So this is telling the web browser that our page is in English. I forgot to do this once. And Google popped up and was like, do you want to translate this page to English? And I was like, no, it's already in English. I just forgot to tell them, the robots, that it was English. Okay, so inside our document, we have two sections. We have the head and the body. The head is all the information that you can't see. It's meta information. It's information about information, right? It's like the title that shows up in the tab. It's not on the page, but it's about the page. So we'll create a head. A faster way to create elements, you can just type the name of the element and hit tab, and it will automatically generate it for you. So inside the head, we can create a title. Just type title, hit tab, and inside this title element, we just put some text. That's the title of our page. So I could put title in here and I could save it. And how do we open this? How do we see this title in the tab? Well, we download Live Server. So we can hold Alt, L, and O, and that will open up Live Server for us. And you can see here is our web page with our wonderful title up in the tab. How do we change this? Well, we just change the text in here. I could change this to Zach's website. Beautiful, there we go. Updates live server. So if we opened this HTML file in the browser as a file normally, how noobs do it, you would have to refresh the page every single time you make a change, which is very annoying. So we've downloaded live server so that whenever we save our file, it will update for us automatically. We don't have to keep hitting refresh. Now, what if we want to actually see something on the page? Because this is pretty boring. Well, we add the body element. And inside the body, you can see everything on the page. Because the body is the body. I don't know how to explain it. You can see everything in the body. But you actually shouldn't just put plain text in the body. You should put tons of elements in here. One of them is the paragraph element. So this will create a paragraph of text, and you'll see it'll move down a little bit. Why did it do that? Why is this moved down lower than the text we had before? Well, this is due to something called the User Agent Stylesheet, which is basically just the default way that the browser makes things look before we tell it how things look. So if I told you there's a chair over there, you probably have some idea of what a chair looks like. So if I don't tell you what it looks like, you're just gonna, assume what it looks like. This is what the browser is doing. It's assuming what we think a paragraph looks like, and it's saying, oh, well, a paragraph has, this much margin on top and below it, and it has this font, and it's black, and the background's white. It's assuming all these things. We could specify exactly how we want it to look, but at the moment we're just learning HTML. And HTML covers the structure of a web page, not how it looks, not the styling. There's a separate language for that, CSS. CSS defines how the page looks, whereas right now we're only describing what the page has on it. So we're kind of making the cake, and CSS would be the icing on that cake. We're just going to focus on the cake for now because there's so much to learn about the cake. For instance, headings. We could add a heading to our page. If we save this, you'll see here that the User Agent Stylesheet has decided that headings are bold, much bigger than paragraphs, and have, is it more margin? Tiny bit more margin. We could change this, of course, with a style attribute. So style allows us to add CSS right into the HTML. You shouldn't do this normally. This is just demonstration purposes. So I could change the color, if I can type, to blue. Bang, heading's blue. So this is styling. So what we're doing right now, we're intertwining how things are structured, what they are, with how they look. We shouldn't be doing this. We should get rid of this horrible, horrible styling right here. Get rid of that. Terrible. No one should ever do this. Styling should be in a completely separate file. We'll cover that later, but that's how you add styling inline. Don't do it. I don't know why I taught you that. You shouldn't be doing this. Let's move on. There's 6 different headings in HTML. It ranges from H1 to H6. So we could move down to H2. Heading 2, and that would be slightly smaller than heading 1, but we're speaking HTML terms. We shouldn't be saying smaller. We should be saying less important, because HTML defines what things are, not how they look. So we can move down to H3, and yes, I am going to go through all of them painfully slowly. H5, and no one ever uses H6, but we'll throw it in there. And you can see they're all of decreasing importance, and the browser has rendered them of decreasing size with the User Agent Stylesheet. Now, this is one big thing about HTML, is we're defining the semantic meaning of text or information. What's semantic? Well, semantic is basically a synonym for meaning. So we're describing what things mean, what they are, not how they look. So H1 means the most important heading on the page. H6 means the least important heading, and everything in between is like a slightly less important heading. paragraph means a paragraph, doesn't mean how it looks. Moving on, we could add in a link. So a link is very important in HTML because it's in the name. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext is a link. It's text that's hyper. It wants to go somewhere. That's how I remember it. So a link you add with an anchor element. So type A, hit tab, and this is a link element. So we have this attribute href. Href is basically just the destination of our link when we click on it. And inside of the actual link is the text that displays as the link. So we could call this my link, and it should show up here. And I don't know why it's purple, because purple means a visited link. I haven't clicked on it yet. That's weird. And we could go to, let's be everyone else. Let's do google.com. So when we click, there we go. Now it's blue. So when we click on this link, bang, we're taken to Google. I don't want to go on Google. Go back. So this is what's called an absolute link. I'm describing absolutely where I want to go, and we go there. There's also something called a relative link. For instance, I could create a new file, and I could call it about.html. And this is invalid HTML, but who cares, it'll work. And I could put in here about.html. And when I click on this link, guess what will happen? It goes to the other file in the same directory. That's what this dot and slash mean. It basically just means my directory and then go to. It's kind of redundant. I could get rid of this and it would still work, but it's proper to put this on. It's like putting on a seatbelt. You're supposed to do it. So there's absolute links, there's relative links, there's also in-document bookmark links. So we could put a hash symbol in here, and we could put take me down. And I could put a ton of paragraphs down here. So I'll copy that. And notice if I put all of these paragraphs on the same line and then I save it, what do you think will happen in here in the browser if I save this? Do you think they'll all be on the same line, or do you think they'll all be full paragraphs with their own spacing? What do you think will happen? HTML does not care about your spacing. HTML doesn't give a damn about your spacing. So if I add tons of spaces, it's probably the wrong spot. If I add tons of spaces around this text or in between all these elements, or I break like 100 lines here or something and save it, nothing changes. HTML only really cares about its own elements. It's very selfish, doesn't care at all about your spacing. No one gives a damn. So you can be super messy in your HTML. No one would even know unless they look in your HTML. Please don't be messy in your HTML. But anyway, bookmarks. We could add a paragraph here, and we could give it an ID. So an ID is an attribute that uniquely identifies an element. So there should be no two elements with the same ID, because it's a unique identifier for that element. So I could give this the ID of, what was it, take me down. And when I click on this link now, it will take me down. Bang. It takes you down to that bookmark on the same page. So those are the three types of links sort of in HTML. There's the absolute link that takes you somewhere, absolutely. There's the relative link that takes you somewhere in the same directory or the same website. And there's the bookmark link that takes you somewhere on the same page. There's also another attribute that you can pass to links. You can also pass the target attribute. If you noticed when I opened that Google link, it opened in the same tab and I had to go back to our website here. I could just do a target of blank. And now when I click on that link, it opens, well, it would be opening the bookmark because we've set it as a bookmark, but it opens in a new tab. So when I click on this link, because I have the target of blank, it opens in a brand new blank tab. Now we don't need 3 tabs of the same thing, but you get the point. We could also target self, and that's what it's set to by default. It opens in its own tab. There's also 2 others, but we won't go into them. So there's also the target attribute if you want it to open in another tab, which is pretty cool. You don't want people just leaving your website. Along with links, we also have images. I'll get rid of all this crap. Let's remove you. Rubbish. Rubbish. We don't want you. Too many paragraphs. Okay. So we can add an image. I haven't found an image beforehand, so we'll have to go to Unsplash. What can we choose? That's nice. Where can we get the link? Link. Copy link. And an image is created with an img tag. So an image, you'll notice we didn't get an ending tag. What's going on? This is just the start tag. There's no ending tag for an image. Well, an image has no content. Well, yes, it has the image's content. Does it have the image's content? We'll see. We give the source of our image here, and we'll save that. And it should work. It's not working. Uh-oh. Why is that not working? What did I do? You know what? Copy image address. There we go. We'll try again. Oh, much longer. That will work. That will work. There we go. Massive. Way too big. Way too big. Okay, so you'll notice that there's still no ending tag for our image. And gee, that is a long link. There's no ending tag for our image. So how does it work? Well, this is a self-closing element. What does that mean? Well, it has no content. You can't give content to an image because it doesn't have any text in it. So in HTML, there's content elements and then there's self-closing elements. And an image, it refers to an outside resource. Like the image is not in the page. We're just referring to the image. So HTML, it can't store images in it, only text. So if we want an image in it, we have to kind of embed the image by linking to it somewhere else. So this is a link to Unsplash somewhere else. So we can also define an alternate text for the image if that link doesn't work. So if I screwed up here and I lost this L here, why is it still working? That does not make any sense. What if I screwed up here? There we go. Our image isn't working. It's not showing up because the link's invalid. So what could I do? Well, I could provide some alternate text for it. I could say beach. Now, when the image doesn't load, we get this sad little missing image icon with our alternate text. This also is read aloud by screen readers for people with blindness when they're trying to access websites. It just reads out what's in the image to them because they can't see an image. So it's very important that you define alternate text for your image in case it doesn't load or in case someone can't see it. And it has to describe what's in the image. So I wouldn't just say image in here. Because now, what's it an image of? You're not really helping me. I know it's an image. I want to know what's in it that I'm missing out on. So those are images. Also, you saw the image we had before was way too massive. Huge. We want it to fit on our page. How do we make it fit? Well, we can pass a width and a height. So we could pass a width of 40 pixels, tiny, and a height. Actually, we'll leave the height out and we'll see what happens. It automatically scales if you leave out the height, or if you leave out the width. It corrects for the aspect ratio of the image. So here, we'll make it bigger. Make it like 400. There we go. There's our image. So you can specify the width and height, or just one, as an attribute, but you can also do it in CSS, and it's actually preferable to do it in CSS, but we'll cover all that later. So we've covered paragraphs, headings, links, images. What else were we going to cover? Semantics. I think we covered semantics. Inline versus block. Okay. So there's two types of elements in HTML. There's inline elements and there's block elements. And there's two differences between them. An inline element starts on its own line, like it doesn't create a new line for itself, and it only takes up the width that it needs. It's very considerate. It's a very considerate element. So we could copy this link, and the second link starts on the same line as the previous link, and the previous link only takes up the width that it needs. Links are inline elements. Well, anchor elements are inline. So they start on the one line and they only take up the width they need. But if we had tons of these, I've already copied it. If I create tons of these, you'll see they'll wrap around on that same line. They'll keep wrapping around to multiple lines. But block level elements are elements like our paragraphs and our headings. They start on their own line. You'll see here, this paragraph and the H1 here. They're not wrapping on to the same line. They're taking up the full width available to them. And they start on their own line because they're block level elements. So for instance, if I changed, this is more CSS. Terrible, Zach, terrible. Shouldn't be writing inline CSS, but explanatory purposes, we'll give it a background color. We're not changing the color, we're changing the background color. We'll change it to green. And you'll see here, it goes all the way to the edge of the screen because block level elements take up the full width available to them. And you see a bit here around the body, but don't worry about that. That's the body's default marginal padding. We covered User Agent Stylesheets. But anyway, this green covers the whole width and it starts on its own line because it's a paragraph, it's a block level element. If we gave the same styling to one of our links, and it doesn't matter what order we give it in, you see it's only green for its width. So that's the difference between block level and inline elements. We've covered self-closing, we've covered attributes, we've covered everything. Yeah, we'll cover more in the next video. Stay tuned.